Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and this time we're talking about a potential Zelda announcement before E3 2021. So I think we're going to be getting a big E3 show focused on Breath of the Wild 2. But recently we've been seeing some rumors coming from the supposed leaker Samus Hunter, who seems to have a pretty good track record, who's saying that yeah, Zelda will be at E3, Breath of the Wild 2 will be there, but supposedly we're going to be getting some announcements beforehand, and one of those will be about Zelda. So, for this video, we're going to be focusing on specifically that. We already sort of touched on it a couple days ago, but there's a lot of different possibilities here. Maybe we could be getting a Zelda 35th Anniversary Direct shortly before E3. Or maybe it's something a little bit smaller, like an update on the Age of Calamity DLC or Skyward Sword HD. Or maybe it could have something to do with all the other Zelda games that are rumored, such as Spirit Tracks, or this trademarked Ocarina of Time game, or maybe Twilight Princess or Wind Waker HD, or maybe something else entirely different from all of those things that's related to Zelda. We don't know, but that's what this video is about, talking about these different possibilities for what could maybe be announced related to Zelda before E3 2021. Now before we jump into things, let me very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below, and of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So to get things started, let's first go back to this rumor we talked about a few days ago. There's a whole bunch of things here talking about different things, but we're just going to be focusing on the Zelda side of things. So Zelda, Breath of the Wild 2, will be showing up at E3 2021. A lot of people, myself included, have been predicting it, that at E3 2021, we'll be getting a big Zelda anniversary focus where Breath of the Wild 2 will see a huge blowout and it'll be the star of the show. Looking at how Eiji Aonuma told us we'll be getting more details on Breath of the Wild 2 later this year, it really feels like that's what this is all building up to, a big E3 presentation where we learn a whole bunch of new things for Breath of the Wild 2. It'll be kind of like what we saw for Breath of the Wild 1 back at E3 2016. The big difference being that back at E3 2016, that was the only game of the show. This time around, Nintendo will have a few other things, but the big one is still going to be the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But I wouldn't say that's like a crazy prediction or idea. A lot of people seem to think that that's what Nintendo has been suggesting and that's what they're going to be doing this E3. But I've been thinking, and a few others have also been thinking, that Nintendo will talk about some of their other Zelda anniversary plans during E3. But recently, we got that leak from Samus Hunter, who has a pretty good track record, that's suggesting that we'll be getting some additional news about Zelda that's not directly related to Breath of the Wild 2 before E3. Now what's interesting about this is that they mention it in conjunction with Pokemon news, and historically speaking, before E3 time, usually we get some sort of Pokemon Direct or presents shortly before E3, like a week or two in advance. So some have been interpreting that maybe Samus Hunter is alluding to potentially a Zelda Anniversary Direct. Now, that's an exciting proposition. I feel like there's a small chance of that, but I gotta be real with you guys. Upon closer inspection and analysis, I don't think that's the most realistic outcome here. Could happen, not saying it won't happen, but I'm not quite expecting it, and let me explain why. While I will say that it is interesting that there have been some rumors suggesting that the Mario Anniversary Direct could have happened as early as last April in 2020, which would suggest that maybe Nintendo would do some sort of anniversary presentation around this time this year for Zelda. That kind of makes sense. But also I feel like we are already fast approaching the time where Nintendo will make announcements for their E3 plans. I feel like it would be weird for Nintendo to say like a week or two from now to announce their E3 plans and then a week later have a Zelda Anniversary Direct. I just think that's a little strange. I think by this point in the year, you just wait those few more weeks and you get that big Zelda Anniversary Focused Direct. They will probably also have some space left over for other Nintendo games like maybe Metroid or Donkey Kong or whatever Nintendo has planned for the second half of 2021. But I'm sure you could argue that there's just so much potential Zelda Anniversary things that could be happening, they might want to get that started now, talk about a lot of those Zelda plans now, and maybe just tease or reference Breath of the Wild 2 and have that be the true star of E3 2021. Maybe Nintendo wants to space things out a little bit. I feel like it's the best argument you can make for a last-minute Zelda Anniversary Direct. While I have been speculating about that possibility the last few days, I don't think it's the most likely outcome. I think more likely we'll be getting our Zelda Anniversary announcements at E3, but as I already suggested earlier, there are a lot of potential announcements to be made. There's that Ocarina of Time trademark that's not related to the original Ocarina of Time or the 3D remake back on 3DS. And then there's also the supposedly super likely 100% happening Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. They're apparently coming this year as well. Like, if that's actually true, when is Nintendo gonna announce those? And then there's this rumor for Spirit Tracks, which, I guess, sure, if that happens, great, but it's just a whole other Zelda game there? I don't know, it's kind of strange. And then, of course, we already have Skyward Sword HD coming, and we have the Age of Calamity DLC, which we haven't actually gotten too many details on yet, and some bonus stuff is supposed to come out shortly before E3, so I think around this May, and the actual first pack is supposed to come out in June. So there's a lot of potential Zelda information or games to be discussed and announced, so maybe Nintendo will want to have some sort of separate presentation before E3, that way they can get that all out of the way and focus on other things that are brand new games that aren't just Zelda, and then of course Breath of the Wild too. Maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe. But I want to point something out. I feel like, in general, when we get leaks or rumors, if they have some possibility of being true, we have an inclination to kind of maybe think that, oh, this might be more awesome than what it actually is. I think that happens quite often. For example, Samus Hunter was talking about how there would be some sort of Nintendo Switch Online sort of trial announced. Before we knew what that was, maybe some of us were thinking something a little bit more hype, maybe some sort of form of legacy content, or some sort of old Nintendo game being allowed as a trial. Well, what it is Descenders, and I'm not saying it's a bad game, but it's also maybe not what a lot of people were hoping for. The point I'm making here is that when we hear this potential rumor that we'll be getting some sort of Zelda announcement that's not directly related to Breath of the Wild 2 before E3, that doesn't have to mean a big, awesome 35th anniversary direct that talks about everything Zelda, and then they save Breath of the Wild 2 for E3. I feel like that's probably not what's gonna happen. It's possible, because there could potentially be a lot of different things that Nintendo may want to announce and talk about, but I feel like what's more likely is that it's something a little bit smaller than that. So then what would be that smaller thing? Well, it could just be news on Age of Calamity DLC. We still have not gotten footage on that. There's supposed to be some bonus sort of stuff coming in May, I think, and then the actual pack comes out in June. Maybe we get some information about that before it actually is supposed to happen. That kind of makes sense, right? That might be what this all is. However, I've also been sort of thinking that it would be quite nice to maybe get that trailer for that first pack of the Age of Calamity DLC during the E3 Direct, and then they shadow drop it. The first pack's supposed to come out in June, E3 is in June, maybe that's the plan here. Either way, they still have to have that other content that is supposed to come out before the first pack. So either way, it's possible that that's what this all is, and we're kind of blowing this out of proportion. It's also possible they may just want to give us another update on Skyward Sword, that way they don't focus on it at E3. That's a possibility, although I feel like that's something you probably could just talk about at E3. I don't really feel like that's too much of a stretch to do. So if it's not news on these already known quantities of Zelda, what else could it be? Well, it could be a new announcement for something we don't know about yet. Maybe we get confirmation for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD, and they let us know it's coming out in a few months, and that's pretty much it. That's a possibility. That would be a really nice announcement, but it's already HD remasters that were out on the Wii U. I don't think it's like that big of an announcement to make. It's not as big as Skyward Sword, for example. So maybe they could have that as its own separate little trailer announcement sometime in May, and that would be sort of what Samus Hunter is alluding to. Maybe. But then there's also this sort of tease about tracks and one more stop, and there's this rumor of Spirit Tracks maybe happening. What if we get some sort of Spirit Tracks announcement? I gotta say I'm skeptical of it, because of all the Zelda games you bring back, why Spirit Tracks? Seems a little strange to me. However, I will say that Spirit Tracks would be the ideal kind of Zelda game for Grezzo to go back and remake. That would be an exciting thing for them to do, if they were to announce that this year, that would be fine. I don't know if that's the game that should come out this year, because I personally think we're going to be getting Breath of the Wild 2 for the holiday, and then there's also Skyward Sword, so it'd be kind of strange to have this 2D Zelda that just randomly got announced to be coming, but, you know, maybe. I'm not super confident about this whole Spirit Tracks idea, even if Grezzo is remaking Spirit Tracks, because Miitopia is coming out this May, which is another thing that Grezzo has been working on. I really feel like, timing-wise, this just isn't right for another Zelda remake by Grezzo, so even if it's happening, I feel like this is probably a ways off, but you never really know. But there's another potential Zelda game here, and that's the one that could be related to this Ocarina of Time trademark. Could we be getting some sort of Ocarina of Time remaster or remake? I'll tell you that if there's any sort of game that Nintendo should remake again, it is Ocarina of Time. That is considered to be one of the greatest games of all time. Sure, we got the remake back on 3DS, but it's not an HD remake, and that would be amazing. I've had my dreams and speculation that maybe Nintendo will someday remake, like from the ground up, or rather reimagine Ocarina of Time. That would be amazing. But again, I don't really feel like it's the right time for that either, because, well, we have Breath of the Wild 2. If they were to be reimagining Ocarina of Time, I feel like it would be something that would take the place of the big main Zelda game in development. So I doubt that Ocarina of Time is getting reimagined, or if it is, it's definitely not coming out anytime soon. But that trademark still exists. We may not find out what it's for anytime soon. It may not be for anything. It could be just Nintendo protecting the name for what may happen or may not happen. But it also might be something a little bit smaller. Maybe we're going to get like a 3D All-Stars like remaster or port of Ocarina of Time on the Switch eShop. That would actually be pretty cool in my opinion. I would love to see Ocarina of Time, maybe also Majora's Mask, on the Switch eShop added as a part of Zelda's 35th anniversary. That is a possibility, I think, and I feel like it's a more likely one than a Spirit Tracks remake. So maybe Nintendo could at least make it known that they plan on celebrating Zelda's 35th anniversary this year. Maybe we get some sort of announcement along those lines, especially with them actually telling us their E3 plans. It would probably include that. Maybe they do have a couple little things that they talk about throughout the month of May. Maybe they do announce Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask coming to the eShop, or maybe they confirm the existence of Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD coming to the Switch. Those are possibilities, and I feel like they make some sense, but of course all of those things could be saved for a Zelda anniversary presentation that might be a part of a bigger E3 Direct presentation. I feel like perhaps the best bet is to simply expect some sort of update on Age of Calamity DLC or Skyward Sword. But we'll see what actually happens. What do you guys think is happening with this potential Zelda news before E3? Are we getting it? Is maybe the rumor just wrong despite the strong track record? Or is it something along the lines of what I'm saying? Or are you thinking something even more exciting? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.